Thank you, everyone. Good morning to some of you all. Good afternoon to others. My name is Teresa, and we are so excited to join you all today. I'm also joined by my colleague Tenzin. We are a part of the pediatric experience team here at Project Sunshine. Tenzin's joining from New York today. I am joining from Florida. And we are just excited to tell you about our organization and what you all will be doing today. Project Sunshine is a 25-year-old international nonprofit that offers volunteer-led play-based activities to pediatric patients and families. We know that stress and anxiety are known to prolong healing, and studies show that play can actually reverse those effects. We know that play normalizes the environment, it provides distraction, choice where there isn't a lot, a sense of relief, an outlet for emotions, and really just allows for creative expression. So, with almost 500 hospital and nonprofit partners across the nation, our organization has 20,000 volunteers serving an average of 200,000 children and families per year, and you all get to be a part of that today. And then, of course, we have an international footprint as well with programming in Canada, Israel, and Kenya. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Tenzin to tell us about the ways we play.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. At Project Sunshine, we have three different types of way we play. So we have Here to Play, which is our in-person college or community volunteers bringing in arts and crafts on a regularly scheduled basis into hospitals, into nonprofits, and just creating play opportunities for kids and for pediatric patients in person. We have Teleplay, which is our virtual program that was born out of the pandemic, where our college and community volunteers host online games and activities for children joining from the hospital or at home. And then lastly, we have Kits for Play, which are individually packaged little play opportunities for pediatric patients, whether they are coming in for an appointment, if they're inpatient and they just need something to distract them. And we have 10 different types of kits that we offer our partners, including our Surgi dolls, which is what you all will be learning to sew today.
Thanks, Tenzin. So what are Surgi dolls? Surgi dolls, as you might have seen from the template, are plain body-shaped dolls that patients can decorate, personalize, and use as a means for comfort during their stay in the hospital. They are all 100% sewn by volunteers, and these stuffed dolls are distributed to medical facility partners. And their medical facility staff, so child life specialists, doctors, nurses, will use those dolls to demonstrate what might be happening during an upcoming procedure. And really, by allowing children to claim ownership of their treatment, Surgi dolls can decrease a patient's anxiety while also serving as a surrogate and a friend. They are in extremely high demand from hospitals across the nation. I myself am also a certified child life specialist, and I consider these to be fabric gold. At Child Life, if you have not heard of the profession, we are professionals in hospitals that educate, advocate, and provide psychosocial support for children and families throughout their stay. And these are I wish I had one for every patient during my time when I was in the hospital setting. They are utilized frequently and really do help to support each and every patient and siblings stay while they're in the hospital. So that is what you all will be doing today. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Nicole. Happy to answer any questions along the way.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and switch over to our lovely instructor, Laura, here, who will guide us through our magical doll making.
Hey, hello. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I really love this project. I I teach people to sew as my regular job, and this was not part of it. I'll explain that later. But what I really love about this project is that it is absolute beginner friendly. If you've never sewn before, like, I understand that's not a skill that's handed down anymore. So this is very, very beginner friendly, but it also results in something that makes an appreciable difference. So I think this is a great project. Hopefully we can all band together and help Teresa have as many dolls as she needs in hospital. One of the first things I'm going to show you how to do is how to print this template. That is really, really important. So I'm going to share my screen. I know Hannah put the template in the chat. So I believe you're all seeing now the doll template. Is that correct? Okay. All right. What you don't want to do is you don't want to print it right from here. Because if you print it right from here, this template will scale to fit your piece of paper and you'll wind up with something that like this. You don't want all of the doll to fit on one piece of paper. What I would recommend is that you download it and open it in a free version of Adobe Acrobat. So this is opening up in the online version of Adobe Acrobat, but even that, I have not been able to figure out how to make it scale correctly. So this is the template opened in Adobe Acrobat. If you go to print here, oh, where's my print dialog? So the print dialog will show up like this. The very important thing that you want to do is you want to choose that it will be a poster. And the scale is 100%. So to repeat, you don't want size, you want to choose this button that says poster, scale 100%, and then hit print. Your template should come out on 4 pieces of paper. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen to show that to you. So you should get 1/4 of the doll on each piece of paper. What you want to do is then you want to lay those out so that they all match up and paste or glue, paste them all together so that you get your completed template. From there, I went ahead and I actually laminated mine because I knew I wanted to make more than one of these, and having a durable product was important to me. You can laminate if you don't have a laminator, which I understand. I'm a very teacher. I have all the office supplies. If you don't have a laminator, you could print on cardstock. You could also glue it onto cardboard or thin poster paper and cut out. But this guy is just a little bit more durable and I can use him over and over and over again. So we have the template. It is it's a little bit more than a foot tall, approximately a foot wide. And then the other things you need for this activity. You are going to need stuffing. Nicole, can you switch to my top-down view? Oh, I was going to move this so you don't see my computer. All right, so this is fiberfill. This will be more than enough for 1 doll. It probably will be enough for 10. Like, this stuff goes a long way. It just doesn't come in smaller amounts. If you are making this for Project Sunshine, we would appreciate, you should buy this new so that you don't want to upcycle your pillows or something. We want to make sure that this is very hygienic for patients. So buying it new and hygienic and clean is important. You also will need, the project list says a 1/2 yard of fabric, but it really just depends on how many you want to make. You need, what I found at Michael's, what I really like is it comes already cut. And so if you've never had experience buying fabric, this one's already cut and made for you. The other thing I like about this is cotton plain weave, which is another important thing. You don't want like a t-shirt jersey material or something like that. Like if it stretches, that's not going to be good for this project. So the Loops and Thread Company, this is 2 yards, it already comes. It says it's 100% cotton. This is really good. You want to make sure you're buying these in the colors that people come in. So a variety of skin tone colors is great.
But if you're making this for Project Sunshine, we don't have a purple or a pink person. This is really meant for the kids to identify with themselves and then be able to decorate on their own. You also need chalk. Chalk is kind of like a you can use a bunch of different things for chalk. Again, at Michael's, you can buy these. These are called Tailor chalks, and they're like little squares of, it's not a chalk-like substance. It's kind of in between a colored pencil lead and chalk. And really what color you get determines like what will show up on the fabric you're tracing. So here I have this dark colored fabric. I want this, I'm gonna need this white to really make my line show up. You guys could see that. It is called Tailor's chalk. So otherwise, there's another thing available at Michael's is these, they're called fabric marking pencils. You want to make sure that they're not permanent. So this one has a disappearing ink side or a mark be gone side. The difference between these two is that this one will fade eventually over time. This one needs to be washed out. For this project, if you're not going to finish it in a very quick amount of time, I would use this mark be gone side. If you don't have either of those two things, I can give you the advice, use it with a piece of caution. I have found that washable markers, as long as you make sure that they can wash out, can also do the same thing. You'll also need, so we have the template, we have stuffing, we have a fabric, we have chalk, then you will need thread in colors to match your fabric. I have these colors. Today I'm actually going to sew in a contrasting color, just so you can see it easier on your screens. But when you're sewing this, you want the thread to match the color of the fabric as much as possible. You will also need scissors. If you're a sewer already, you might have something called shears. Shears are nice and fancy, and they are meant for cutting fabric. If it is kind of an inside joke among people who sew that like don't cut anything other than fabric with the shears because cutting through fabric can dull them. So even when cutting out your template, you want to use some regular scissors. I understand if you don't have shears. Regular scissors should be fine. If you're finding that your cutting is getting choppier or you're not cutting through smoothly, try to find a newer pair of scissors. That will probably take care of your problem. Okay. So we're going to start with some fabric and lay it out.
And Laura, what are the recommended fabrics?
Yes.
I had someone ask about muslin, so that's why.
If the muslin is not a very big open weave, that is okay. Muslin is a type of quilting cotton. If you look for quilting cottons, you want it to be woven. And that's why I really like these, like the ones on these two, they don't package different types of fabric in this way to be sold. So that's why I really like these pre-packaged bundles. But I don't know if you can, let's see if it will zoom in. Do you see how that kind of looks? So it kind of has an over under weave. That's what you're looking for. It's called quilting cotton for a reason. It feels like a quilt or sheets would feel like, if that makes sense. The question came up, does it need to be pre-washed? Because this doll is not going to be used a lot of times, like go through the wash a lot of times, it doesn't necessarily have to. The reason you pre-wash fabrics is to eliminate shrink before you cut and sew something. If you do want to wash it, I would recommend washing this whole yard and making sure you have a sensitive, a dye-free, fragrance-free, all-free kind of detergent. Because again, this is going in hospital settings and we don't want to cause allergies or reactions. So I'm going to move on from this, like I could unwind the whole thing. I might take an iron to it just to make sure the wrinkles were out. I'm going to move instead to showing you on fabric what you're gonna want to do. Okay, fabric has grain. Grain means the directions that the thread are going. So when you're making a fabric on the loom, some of them go this way and some of them go this way. You kind of want your doll to line up head to feet with the direction of the grain. That being said, this is not as important as in other projects. Like when you're sewing clothes, if you're off grain, that's what causes your pant leg to twist or skew, if anyone's ever had that problem. Because this is not going to be worn, it doesn't have as big of a risk of going off grain, but still just some good rules for when doing sewing projects is try to line up on grain. So visually, I can see that my threads are running this way, and therefore I want my doll to be running in the direction of those threads. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace around this whole thing. I'm going to start where it says to leave open. Come all the way around this arm. And then I'm going to mark this other side. This just reminds me not to sew between these two places because we're going to need to flip this doll inside out later. Another thing I want to point out is I do have 2 layers here. If you want to make sure that they stay together, you might take some pins or some safety pins and just do a pin like in each limb to hold those 2 together as you work with and sew. I didn't mention this before, but I am working off of these directions from Project Sunshine. I have found that it is a little bit better to print them in color because then you can really see what is going on in the stitches on the back. But right now we are on step number 3, prepare the pattern. Step number 4, if you're a beginning sewer, I'm going to tell you to skip this one for now. Step number 4 says to cut out the pattern. So what it wants you to do is it wants you to go ahead and cut like a 1/2 inch around this outside line. You don't want to cut on the line because you are going to sew on the line. So a way to, you can get your ruler out and figure out what a 1/2 inch is. That being said, as long as you're not too close to that line, you're going to be fine. So this is how you would, this doesn't have to be as nice. It matters what you sew when you turn it inside out. It doesn't necessarily matter like if your cutting was smooth. That's all going to get hidden on the inside. However, if this is your first time or if you just prefer it this way, I actually like to wait until the end to cut my doll out. So I'm going to show you from here on out, I'm going to show you one that I haven't cut the doll out. I'm not going to use this one. The line doesn't show up as well. Can you guys see that? You can't see the white lines on this one, right? No, instead transition to this one. Okay, you can see I've got 2 layers. You can see the outline of this doll in blue. You can see where there's supposed to be an opening. Here, you're going to want to take your needle. You're going to want to thread it with thread that matches the fabric. So if I was actually really sewing this one for not demonstration purposes, I would use this color thread. If you see, like, you can not see it as much against the fabric. But for today, I'm going to show you it with this contrasting thread that's darker brown. You are going to want to tie a knot. So how much thread do you want? It really depends. You can do a long thread, but then you're going to have, like, you run the risk of twisting as you sew and getting knots. If you're a beginner, I would recommend starting with shorter amounts of thread and then like reloading your needle as it runs out. You do not have to have an easy thread needle, although those are nice, and that's what we recommend, but any hand sewing needle will do. Honestly, I bet most people have one around sitting somewhere. I pulled off about 18 inches, that's approximately, and then I threaded it. I'm going to thread it through the eye. I'm going to take both ends of the thread right here. Do you see both of them? So my thread is doubled up. And then I'm going to tie a knot here. And then to make sure it really stays, I tie another knot, but I make sure to catch this first knot in the loop of my second knot as I tighten it. Oh, I didn't. So I didn't catch it. They're next to each other. So we're going to do it one more time. It's okay. Okay, now there I have a nice sturdy knot. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm finding the. There we go. Okay, so you were going to start with one of where the spot that says open. You're going to start, and it's very simple, very simple. You go down. Whoa, that was almost fun for a minute. Sorry, everyone. Okay. Sewing is not really this dangerous. I just had my camera too close to the edge of the table. But you are simply going down and up. You're making stitches that are about, you want to keep stitching on the line you created. You're making stitches about 1/4 of an inch, or like half of the width of one of your fingernails. The closer together they are, the better quality it will be. You don't want big gaps in your stitches because that is potentially where stuffing can come out. Here's another helpful tip. If you're for a first-time sewer, you don't have to own one of these or buy one of these, but I think it is really helpful. I like to do embroidery. And this is another thing that's available at Michael's. Oh, I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I had everything laid out and now cannot seem to find my embroidery. Give me just a minute. So there's a bunch of different types of embroidery hoop. This is an easy release one. You can use any type, but what I like about this one is you simply put the hoop underneath the fabric. And then you squeeze the inner ring to put it inside the hoop, and when you let it go, it pushes the fabric against the outer hoop. Oh, I got my needle in there. So I gotta release it.
And Laura, you can use a sewing machine if you have one, correct?
Oh, yes, yes. Apologies. If you have a sewing machine and know how to sew, you can use a sewing machine. It would speed up the production time a lot. That being said, so I've since COVID, even before then, I've really gotten into mental health. And I found something that I don't do, and I don't know if other makers feel the same way. I struggle to sit still and meditate. So the thing I've learned about myself is I can do meditative making. And this is an example. So like, if you have something that's small and repetitive, I notice I will sit and do this, and actually it kind of clears my mind, things like that. So there is advantage to hand sewing if you want that to be sort of a place where your brain can wind down, because it is a repetitive motion, just back and forth and back and forth. Okay, I am showing going down and up each time. However, you can do something like this, where you take the tip of the needle and you go in and out and in and out and in and out. And that will enable you to get 3 stitches at a time. It really is up to you. Either way. Oh, see, this is where we have, it started to get a knot. So I just pulled back on this loop a little bit and I'm pulling it forward. Just watch out for knots. You don't need the embroidery hoop. It really is just, it helps stabilize the fabric where you're sewing it. Otherwise, it is a little floppy without, but the embroidery hoop is definitely not something you have to have. This project is honestly really good and beginner friendly. Children can do it under the guidance of adults. So here I'll show you an example. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I tried this out with her yesterday. She's never done sewing or tracing before. But I had her start, if you see right here, those are where she stitched, and then she got a little bit better to where her stitches were closer together, and that's how it stayed for the rest of it. But she really got the idea of like staying on the line. It was good fine motor practice. If I was going to donate this doll, what I simply would do is where these beginning stitches are, you see them right here, I am going to go back through and complement them with my own stitches. Again, I'm doing this in contrasting thread. I wouldn't do this purposefully normally, but it's for the sake of this demo. So if you see where my daughter stitched and I'm kind of stitching in between them. Oh, that felt like snag. You just you start to feel the thread after a while after doing this sometimes. So I'm going through and I'm putting stitches in between her larger ones. This is also something you can do just on your own if you want. The big difference between a sewing machine and hand sewing is the sewing machine is what we call a lock stitch machine. For a long time, inventing something to replace hand sewing was very difficult because people couldn't conceive of how do you make a needle go down, turn around, and come back up. And we actually cracked it with the idea that there's an upper thread on a sewing machine and a lower thread on a sewing machine. And when the upper thread comes down, it hooks onto threads at the bottom, and that's what creates a lock stitch machine. Here I will show you the difference between, so this is a stitch that has been machine sewn. You can see the stitch length is very small. And also if you turn it over, you can see there's no gaps in between the stitches. If you're hand sewing, you'll notice the difference is there's a gap in between every one of those running stitches. And the same on the backside, it's the opposite on the backside. But yeah, you just go ahead and sew around your Surgi buddy the whole way. So we started here, come around, and he's sewn up to here. Does anyone have any questions, or would you like me to review the stitching at all?
I think we've answered most of the questions so far.
Okay.
Though, yes, it looks like we're good.
She was 4. It took a while. And honestly, around halfway through, I took over and finished it for her. But again, with this meditative making, so I think it could be totally achieved by older children, maybe in an hour. If doing this at home, if I wanted to hand sew it, it's one of those things I keep on hand beside my couch and TV. It's kind of like an excuse to, watch TV, but not be productive. So these are the kinds of things that I like to do. Just at home, it keeps my hands busy and it's really kind of soothing. I'm gonna instead move to, well, I can cut this guy out. So this is, so we really don't have a lot of steps. I'm really kind of trying to break them down, but really we had 2 pieces of fabric. We traced the outline of the doll on it, and then we just sewed around the exterior. You sew right on the line. Now I'm having people go back to step 4 and cut around the doll about 1/2 inch. So you could do this before on step 4, like the directions say, but I think it's easier to work with the fabric before, like as a big piece before cutting it out. Right, so we're gonna go around. This is where, so if I was doing this with my daughter, this is where I might take over. Or I would run the risk of like, maybe they're not all gonna make it and be donatable. Just because you wanna make sure you don't wanna ever cut over this line that you've traced and sewn on. But the 1/2 inch, when it says leave a 1/2 inch around the outside, that's not a law. You just need a little bit excess around the outside. So if you're sometimes a little bit closer and sometimes a little bit further away, you will be okay. Okay. Here, you're gonna have to imagine the stitching line as you go past. How long it takes to make, it really depends on how your skills are sewing. If it's the first time you've been sewing, it might take a while. Probably can make one of these by hand in 30 minutes. On a sewing machine, I can do a lot. The sewing machine, for an experienced sewer, it would take just minutes to sew around this whole thing. But if you're a beginning sewer, this is a great way to practice curves. Just be aware that some of them, like be aware that quality control, you might have to build up your speed before you have donatable ones. So we've cut around our whole template. There's one key detail here. Where our doll's armpits are, we're gonna have to cut slits. And the reason for that is when we flip this inside out, this is all gonna stretch. And if we don't cut slits, like it's gonna see how it kind of like bunches up and doesn't pull right. So right in the armpit area, you want to cut lines up to, but not through the stitching. 1, 2, 3. And here I'll try to illustrate it with, I'm gonna mark it with a pen. You don't have to mark it with a pen. I'm just doing it so it'll show up on the video. But basically what I'm cutting is 1, 2, 3. If that makes sense. And those just allow his arms, his or her arms, to stretch out as you fold them inside out. Okay. Now you gotta turn your guy inside out. A tool I like for this is, honestly, I picked up this, it's just a little clean kitchen utensil. And I like the back of the handle. I don't want anything that pokes through, but it does help to turn things inside out. So we're gonna take that hole. I forgot to snip my thread here. Oh, you know what I haven't shown you? Okay, backing up. When you run out of thread, you do need to tie it off. So I still have a lot of thread here. I apologize, backing up a step. When you finish around your doll or when you're out of thread, and when out of thread, I mean like you have about 3 inches or less left, because you have to be able to get that needle to go around and inside the knot. So just pretend with me that I have less thread left, but when you go to tie a knot, you're gonna make a small stitch. Hold on, sorry. Sorry, I've caught small scissors twice now. Not very good. I need to clean up my workstation. But you're gonna take a little stitch. You see how small that stitch is? I'm gonna pull the needle through. And before that loop is all the way closed, when it's getting towards, this will be easier with a smaller piece of thread for sure, but you're gonna send your needle through that loop before you pull it tight. And that's your first knot. And then the second knot, you simply take your needle under the knot. And again, as that loop is pulling closed, you're gonna send the needle through it again, and that makes your double knot. Actually, it's double knotted with 2 loops here, but that's okay because we can go ahead and trim that. Don't trim super close to the knot because then you run the risk of it coming unknotted. So you might have a series of these through your doll, especially if you are using shorter lengths of thread, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't show up on the final project. Nobody knows if you use one continuous line of thread or if you use multiple. So we're going to turn inside out through our opening. And you just kind of work a little bit at a time. And this is where the wooden spoon handle comes in handy. You could also use like a plastic or a spoon. You just want to stick it through the hole, and you're using it to really make sure that line of stitching is on the edge. I'm turning out, and can people see how I'm using this to push out it at the very line of stitching? See, we got 2 legs and 1 arm. And sometimes you'll just have to get your fingers in there and like slowly untuck a little bit more. Okay. At this point, there's a step that the directions don't say that I would do, but you're fine either way to do it. I would actually take this to an ironing board, and I'd make sure that I kind of pressed him. Again, sometimes like you got to work with these stitches to make sure they're really at the edge, and you would just kind of like roll the fabric between your fingers until they are. The most important piece is, remember this part that we didn't sew. You do want both edges folded under, and like there is a seam there, even though there is a hole. But that would be one to fold under. Okay, here I have one that I've turned out 1 leg and 1 arm. I'm going to finish turning out another arm and the last leg. And this is where we get to go and we get to stuff. Work on taking small pieces about, it's a small handful, and then work it in through the hole and up to all the parts of the body. This is another place where our spoon handle or wooden spoon might come in handy if you want to push it into the head and the torso. Finish. You want to make sure that that stuffing gets, you're filling him or her from the outside in. So you're getting it to the edges first, and then you're going to slowly fill up the center. The other reason I take small clumps of stuffing is the doll's less likely to be lumpy that way. If you take big lumps, has anyone ever been on a lumpy pillow where you can honestly feel the little clumps of fiber fill? They didn't do enough good separating. So this kind of makes your loft, like pulling it apart, makes those clumps not be hard clumps. You don't want to try and overstuff your doll. But also, like, you really want there to be 3D dimension. Like, we don't want this doll to be flat. So. And here I am, I'm just kind of working some of the fiber fill up into the head and neck. Okay, so this is how I've got them filled. I noticed that there's a little wrinkle there, so I might take my fingers in and spread out the fiberfill a little bit more up near the neck area. Just play with it. But this is again, one of the areas where, so I said I had that whole bag. I think, okay, so perhaps, can you, Nicole, can you switch to the face, the heads on view? If you see this whole bag, I have barely used like an inch or two into the bag. So this stuff goes a long way. Thanks, Nicole. And yeah, we'll switch now back. So your doll is stuffed. We just need to make sure that we close her up. So here is where that seam was before. You kind of want to fold both ends under, and you're going to sew this hole shut. To keep it going under like this, one of the things you could do clips to hold it in place like this. Or I take a pin or a safety pin works, and I just kind of like go in and out. Something like that, to hold it in place. The first technique I'm going to show you is a whip stitch. This is what is recommended on the directions. So a whip stitch is very easy. Again, you're going to start with a double knot in the end of your 2 threads. You're going to actually bury this knot by going, you're going to go inside this hole and out through a place where it's already sewn. So I went inside the hole, and where I'm pushing the needle out is in my previous line of stitching. And a whip stitch is very, very simple. You sew, you always come from down to up, and it makes a circular. It kind of like rolls around the edge of the fabric and holds it in that way. Again, you want to make sure that these stitches are not more than 1/4 of an inch apart. And you're going to continue this way up the whole side. I'm also going to show you a variation that makes it look a little bit cleaner and neater. So this is a blind stitch or a hidden stitch. And in this one, you're going to imagine that these 2 rolls of fabric are like tunnels. And you're going to go in one tunnel near the top on one side. And where you came out, see this point right here? That's where you're going to go in the tunnel on the opposite side and come out. And really all this does is it hides that line of stitching inside. This is also really good if you ever had a child and you get the holes in your stuffed animal. This is what you do to fix it. You stuff the stuffing back in, you kind of bring the sides together by going like this. If you're making these on sewing machines, you also could stitch really close to the edge. Just make sure that those raw edges, anything that's, this is a raw edge of fabric, it's a little unravelly. Just make sure those raw edges are tucked in and not exposed, and that you don't have any large holes in the body of your doll. And that's another thing, like say this is your first one, you're going to go check around the outside of all this doll. And if you found a hole somewhere, you could use this whip stitch or this hidden stitch to sew it back together. Okay, so I'm getting back up near to where my previous line of stitching was. And see, like they're apart, but as you pull them together, that makes a nice like seam right there. They just get nice and close to. This is another one. If I was doing this with my 4-year-old, this is one I would take over on my own. But I will say, I was talking to my own mom about doing this project, and she reminded me of a time when I was 4 years old and she paid me a nickel a doll to turn some dolls inside out. So little hands, they can be very useful. They could be, children can turn the doll inside out, they can stuff them. There's a lot of things that can be hands-on. And what I really love about this project is it really also tells them, it gives them the value of community service. It tells them that we can all be together and we can help others out when needed. Okay, so once you've got 2 knots in here, I did a knot just as I did the inside doll. To tuck your thread, you're actually, this is not a real person, but you're gonna stick your thread down in where that tail is coming out and pull it out anywhere. And then you use your scissors to press down a little bit against the body before you clip the thread, and then the thread is buried inside our Surgi doll body. If you're noticing lumpiness, now you can kind of redistribute in between your fingers. But yeah, that's how you make a Surgi buddy. If you have, so Project Sunshine, if you have 10, at least 10 or more, you can download a label. They will pay for shipping. If you have less than 10, you're still welcome to ship it to them. It just would be at your own expense because it really just, it's cost prohibitive for them to ship less than 10. I think that's, if you're making them for Project Sunshine, again, stick to colors that people are. No, Nicole, do we have any questions or anything else? Can I cover anything for anyone?
I think you've covered all of the questions.
Okay.
Let me see if there's any more hiding in
It's
here.
okay to be a little wrinkly. If I wasn't trying to speed through my tutorial, I would actually try to smooth him out, and I might open him back up after this class. This is me just rushing and not distributing the filling very well. And you know, it's like when somebody's looking over your shoulder when you're typing. But
so someone did ask, what was it called when you put the sewing through the tunnel? I believe they meant the whip stitch there at the close.
yes,
But is whip
so
stitch correct?
this is a whip stitch. This one is something called a blind stitch, and you can find a tutorial for that online as well. So this one's a whip stitch. It just does little circles around the edge, but if you want it to be hidden, it's called a blind stitch. There is a pattern linked in the chat previously, or
I'll put out a new link.
Okay.
Just a second.
I think this is a great service project. I am going to do it with my own club. So people ask all the time, why don't they teach certain things in school? That's what I got to do. I'm a family and consumer science teacher. We are the modern evolution of home ec. We changed the name to shed some stigma, but sometimes people don't know who we are. I think it's the best job in the world, though. I really love it. In fact, it was a former high school student of mine who now works for Michael's that said when they needed somebody to sew, she's like, oh, you can reach out to my teacher. If you are interested in FCS teaching or supporting FCS teachers, you can go to www.fcsed.net. But I love if people knew we existed. We were out there, and we are all about teaching important life skills like culinary arts, financial literacy, sewing, other things like that. All right, I'm going to give it back over to Project Sunshine so they can hit on the last few items.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for that amazing tutorial. I have tried before to sew a Surgi doll. I am very inexperienced, but it ended out pretty good, I must say, because the instructions are very clear. And I had never sewn before, but it was great. So I just have a couple more things that I wanted to share with you all. Let me just get that up properly. And let's see.
Tenzin, I would also add for anyone out there, I think the key to starting to sew is to take the pressure off yourself. Just do it one time, put on music that you like, put on a show that you like, and just accept that it's going to take a while. But there really there's some beauty in hand making items. And I really have found it's a way for me to slow down and kind of get a chance to be calm and collect myself. So.
Yeah, I definitely really enjoyed it once I got into the groove of it. It definitely took like a couple of stitches before I felt comfortable. But once I got into the groove of it, it was like very relaxing, even though I was pinching myself a little bit, but that was just me. All right. So thank you all so much for participating, for being a part of this, and for your willingness to sew some Surgi dolls and provide that extra support to our pediatric patients. I just wanted to reiterate again, I know Laura just mentioned this, but yeah, if you are able to sew more than 10 dolls, we will provide a shipping label to you, and there's a QR code on the next slide that I can share where you can get that shipping label. But if it is less than 10 and you still want to donate them, on our website, you can find our address. If you just scroll all the way down to the bottom, it'll be right there. And if you want to get more involved with Project Sunshine, you can follow us on Instagram. It's just at Project Sunshine. And if you're interested in doing some in-person volunteering, you can check out our website. It's just projectsunshine.org. And then on the next slide, if you want to sew more Surgi dolls in the future, you can scan this QR code and that will lead you to our site for Surgi dolls, where you can request materials, you can request shipping labels, etc., etc. And yeah, I think
That's
that
it.
Yeah.
Can I throw in one last thing I forgot to cover earlier? I apologize, everyone. Maybe we can make a pop-up card. But keeping in mind with these being donated to hospitals and being very sterile conditions, I washed my hands before starting this tutorial. I had antibacterial hand spray on hand. If you have pets, you want to do this in a pet-free environment. The other thing is I wasn't eating. I only had water here with me, but make sure that you're being very clean and sterile with your environment is very important for this. So.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Yeah, no like food or drinks nearby just because of allergens. And then another thing I wanted to say, I think I saw some questions in the chat earlier, was that all of our Surgi dolls should be in skin color fabric. Yeah, I think that was all from me.
And it looks like those of you all who are interested in learning more about the organization, potentially volunteering in person, maybe at your local, at a local children's hospital. I saw some folks in there from Baltimore, Aurora, LA, Palm Beach, all places where we're recruiting for volunteers. So there's actually a lot of people on this call right now who could potentially do even more with us if you were interested. So that is super exciting. So thank you all for having us.
We do have a couple of questions. I figured I'd throw those out there before we take our leaves. We have someone who did ask if there was a specific date that these need to be by, or is this sort of an open-ended project?
Definitely open-ended.
On our end.
Yeah, on our end.
Okay,
We have needs, so whenever you're able to send them, we would love them. But yeah, we're always taking them.
And then did they need, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and if you enjoy this and would like to do this regularly, you know, they're always needed at multiple facilities across the nation. So, like I said, they're in high demand. So we are always looking for more at any point in time.
I saw it in there one about spraying them with Lysol, and if I could volunteer I would not do that because the smell would be terrible. I was very involved in making masks during COVID-19, and if you want to sanitize them, you can set your oven on a low, as low as it would go. You put the doll in, make sure it's not touching any walls or anything, but you put it in for 5 minutes. That will kill any germs, bacteria, things like that on it. But it definitely is an oven, not a microwave, because the microwave gets hot spots and you'll get a little melty doll. But that is a way to sanitize that's a little bit less. Some kids have reactions to different cleaning products, and we really just don't want to hazard that. So that would be my recommendation.
And then we had someone ask about if they needed to be bagged before they were boxed. I just wanted to get that one out there.
I think
Like
just
put
in
in
a
a plastic
box
bag or anything. Just in a
I think
box?
just in the box is perfectly fine. They'll get shipped back to our office and then we will determine, you know, which of our partners need more Surgi dolls, and then we can properly pack them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this for us today. And thank you all for joining us. We
Yeah.
appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing you in another class. Take care, everyone.
Good luck sewing. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Happy sewing.